Is China turning its back on foreign business? Worries are growing after top officials slam the quality of foreign brands. Plus, we look at a $75 million jewel heist and whether inflation could be a good thing. Welcome to the News Hub. I'm Kelly Evans, joined this morning by Evan Newmark, Thorold Barker.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I see two of us embody the St. Patrick's spirit.
So what do you expect?
I can't possibly.
But you've gone full emerald.
Well, I'm
you've
told
gone full
my name
emerald.
means grandson in
I'm
Irish.
kind of like got the
mossy green.
Yeah, peat bog green here.
Well, we're looking sort of across the other sea for the moment to China, where relations seem to have really tensed up over the last couple weeks, last year, if you talk to some businesses operating over there. And a curious statement on a Chinese website, meanwhile, saying that international designer goods have proven unsuitable for China. So certainly a country that once sort of
the Louis
embraced
Vuitton luggage ain't working.
Yeah, well, apparently not. They're really trying to stimulate domestic demand, their own brands, which have really failed to take on a lot of lure as the country is growing. We have both Andrew Brown in Beijing for the story and John Bussey in Washington, but we're going to go to Andrew first. And Andrew, you have this story sort of looking at tensions. I'm curious if you can give us a sense of whether these fears are overblown or if there's a legitimate sign that China's turning inward.
Yeah, I think China is turning inward to an extent. Look, foreign companies are making money in China. You have to be making money in this economy because it's growing at 10% a year. The question is the threats that are existing to businesses coming down the pipeline. And we have very hostile regulation. For instance, we have rules about, how foreign companies are not going to be able to sell into the government procurement market. You have an atmosphere that is generally anti-foreign and pro-Chinese companies, and particularly state-owned companies.
The curious thing, which I'll pose to the panel, is that you can't talk about any U.S. company without talking about China. It's such a huge market, and so any sort of threat that they may not be able to do business as they'd like, I think, is a significant one.
I like to look at it along a spectrum. Okay, and think of it in the following way, because
Okay.
I've done business in a place like Russia,
Okay.
which is very antithetical or antipathetic to Western business. I've done business in a place like Japan, which is also very tough for foreigners. Where does China stand along the spectrum? And I still think China probably stands along the more easier to invest in countries along the spectrum of all the nations in the world rather than close to Russia.
Growing pains?
I think so, but look, I'm not a China expert.
I think one of the things you've got to bear in mind is it depends what kind of business you are going into China. If you're someone who's put massive capital investment into the country, that's more of an issue for you in terms of what happens over the next 10, 15 years. If you're a luxury goods company, basically, you have to put stores in, but basically you're importing your luxury goods. They're not made in China, and you're selling them, and you're doing very well because of the new Chinese wealth that's there, whether through Hong Kong, whether through China. So you've got a great opportunity to make money right now. It's not like you have to put down billions of dollars into the country, so you can make money while it lasts.
And Andrew, quickly to you, what about China? What about Google? Obviously, that's sort of a high-profile example of where they said the Chinese authorities have hacked into their computers and they're worried about security concerns. Is that a narrow example, or are there other concerns of that going on?
It's a wake-up call, I think, to a lot of foreign businesses in China, which is that the regulatory environment is getting much, much more difficult. If it happens to Google today, it may happen to you tomorrow. And I think it's got a lot of foreign businesses quite rattled over here.
Okay, Andrew, thanks. And John Bussey in Washington, do you get a sense that sort of the Obama administration or people in the Beltway are watching this problem? And certainly there's been some heating up of rhetoric lately. You've had